In history, there are stories we can't explain, mysteries that keep us guessing. Welcome to Mysteries Unfolded, where we unfold puzzling tales from the past. In February 1959, a group of experienced hikers embarked on a journey through Russia's Ural Mountains. What followed would become one of the most perplexing mysteries of the 20th century. The group, led by Igor Dyatlov, consisted of 9 young adventurers, all eager to conquer the challenging terrain. However, as they ventured deeper into the wilderness, they unknowingly sealed their fate. On the night of February 2nd, something inexplicable happened. Their tent, located on the slopes of Kholat Shakal, was discovered ripped open from the inside, abandoned in a state of chaos. The hikers, seemingly fleeing in panic, left behind their belongings and ventured into the freezing night, ill-prepared for the harsh conditions. Days later, the first grim discoveries were made. The bodies of the hikers were found scattered across the mountainside, their final moments frozen in time. Some had succumbed to hypothermia, while others bore inexplicable injuries, fractured skulls, broken bones, and even missing tongues. Remarkably, despite the chaos, one perplexing detail stood out. The hikers had fled into the darkness, leaving behind their warm clothing and protective gear, and it was minus 30 degrees Celsius at that time. In their haste, they had abandoned coats, gloves, and boots. There was a tree which had signs of damage with branches broken. It seemed like someone tried to climb it because they were getting chased by something or someone. Only 2 hikers were found without warm clothing. The other 3 hikers were found between the tree and the tent. They were better dressed than the previous 2 hikers, but they still lacked some essential items, such as gloves, boots, hats. They were all found facing the tent as if they were struggling to reach the tent at the time of their death. Some sustained minor injuries, but all of the 5 hikers died from hypothermia. The other 4 hikers were found on a small hill, 75 meters away from the tree, and were covered in 3 meters of snow. 3 of them sustained major injuries. Medical experts said that injuries were sustained from a fall. One of the woman's tongue was missing. On May 28th, this case was discontinued with an indistinct and cryptic conclusion. The lead investigator wrote in the final report, "The cause of death was an unknown compelling force which the hikers were unable to overcome." Not a convincing explanation, right? Well, let's see some things that were strange about this incident. Reports said that one of the woman's tongue was missing. Now, there are 3 theories about this. The tongue was cut off by someone else. The scavengers ate the tongue after she died, and some say that the tongue was found after some time. But the medical report says the diaphragm of the tongue and the mouth is missing. The medical examiner considered it as a minor detail because he didn't elaborate it. During the time of investigation, some investigators and groups of hikers claimed that they saw a UFO in the sky. They said that they saw a bright, shining thing in the sky. Out of all of them, 1 hiker saw it at night, and this is the picture of that bright, shiny thing. Now, this can be a candle or some sort of light, but if it's in the night sky, then there can be a few possibilities about what it is. It can be a rocket, a part of rocket, an aircraft, or something related to this. Because this incident took place in the Soviet Union during the Cold War, so there would have been a lot of aerial activity. So now the question is, what happened on that night? Why did they run out of their tents? So the most likely explanation for this is that there was a pipe installed in the tent for cooking. It was installed to keep the black smoke out of the tent, but the pipe probably malfunctioned, which caused the tent to get filled up with harmful black smoke. Now the hikers quickly made holes to keep the smoke out of the tent, then they scratched the tents to quickly get out of the tent. Now the nearest shelter that they knew of was the woods, considering they were not in their senses. They probably thought that they were a lot closer to the tent than they actually were. 2 of them found the tree and tried to climb it for shelter, while the other 3 went ahead and fell from a 3-meter cliff. The other 4 decided to go back to the tent, and they couldn't reach it and died on the way back. On the night of June 9, 1912, the Moore family, along with 2 young house guests, settled into their modest home for a night's rest. unaware of the horror that awaited them. The next morning, Moore family's neighbor was in her backyard when she realized that no one in the Moore family has come out of their house. At around 7 a.m., she became suspicious that no one came out to do their regular chores. She went to their front door and let the chickens out. She knocked on the door, but no one responded. She then tried to open the door, but it was locked. Then she called her brother to open the door. He tried to see from the window, but the curtains were down. He then used a spare key to open the door, and what he found inside was the dead body of 2 girls in the guest bedroom, with blood splattered onto the backboard of the bed. He then called Joe's hardware store and told them to call the sheriff of the town and tell him that something bad has happened. The sheriff arrived at around 8:30 a.m. and started his investigation. There was a plate of food with water covered in blood sitting on a table. The axe used for the murders was partially cleaned by the killer and was lying against the wall in the guest bedroom. The 2 bedrooms that the Moore family occupied had axe marks on the ceiling. The marks on the ceiling were not in correlation to hitting the victims. Sarah Moore was only one who had slash marks on her face. The rest of the victims had been beaten to death by the blunt side of the axe. Josiah Moore's head was obliterated by the killer. The tissues and blood were spread over the board of the bed. In the guest room, Ina Stillinger was leaning towards the left side of the bed. Some think that she was the only one who was alive at the time of the murder. The children were killed in their sleep by the blunt side of the axe. Cigarettes were found in the attic, and it was believed that the killer hid in the attic until the Moore family arrived and waited for them to go to sleep. There were several suspects and people who confessed to be the murderer, but all were eventually dismissed as suspects. There were axe murders happening in other states. Many of them were done in the same way, with whole families being bludgeoned by the axe. It took 2 years for a trial for Villisca murders. After the murder, you couldn't find a gun or the lock, as they were sold out because people were scared. Some of the main suspects in this case were Reverend George Kelly, a traveling preacher who exhibited strange behavior and confessed to the murders multiple times. But his confessions were considered unreliable due to inconsistencies and lack of evidence. Frank F. Jones, a local businessman and rival of Josiah Moore, speculated to have had a motive related to a business dispute. However, no substantial evidence tied him to the crime. William Mansfield, a serial killer suspected in several similar axe murders in the Midwest. Although he was briefly considered a suspect, no concrete evidence linked him to the Villisca murders. Henry Lee Moore, another serial killer who was active around the same time and used similar methods. Like Mansfield, he was investigated but never conclusively connected to the Villisca case. After all the interrogation and investigation, this case became cold after some years, and whoever was behind the Vasila murders took the secret with them to the grave. The Vasila murders to this day remains one of the most perplexing murder mysteries to this day. Who do you think was behind these 2 mysterious cases? Tell us in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next mysterious revelation. Don't forget to like and subscribe